Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&D Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jet Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
Hey everybody, this is Davis over at Con Freaks and Geeks, and I would like to welcome you to another episode of Pop Culture Gems. This is a series where we talk to amazing creators, artists, cosplayers, voice actors, and so much more. If you like what the interviews we do with amazing guests, give us a thumbs up, a follow, subscribe to any of our social media channels, or you can go, but you can mostly check out our main website, confreaksandgeeks.com, to check out this amongst many other episodes, or check it out on any podcast services out there as Pop Culture Gems. Today, I have a special treat for you. I have an amazing voice actor here in the Lone Star State with me, so I'm always hyped when I hear all the representation I have within Texas. I got a voice actor that's been in many different kinds of shows. She currently is the voice actor of Yoko Inari from Kimono Jihen. She is Heine from Combatants Will Be Dispatched, or most importantly, everyone may know her as Milim Nava, the scary yet adorable demon's king in That Time I Was Reincarnated as a Slime. I would like to welcome Kristen McGuire to the show. How are you doing, ma'am?
Hi, I'm great. How are you doing?
Oh, I am doing good. It's Friday. I'm all set. I don't know why I have so much energy, but I'm good.
Because it's Friday.
Oh, that is very true. Like this week was just dragging on, but then it was like Friday. I'm like, oh, I got to talk to Kristen McGuire this weekend, and then after that, I was like, I kind of want to go read some manga, and then just nice and chill out for the rest of the weekend. But I'm definitely glad. But I'm really glad to talk to you.
Thanks. I'm not gonna lie. I almost panicked because I was actually just upstairs writing a script, and I looked at the time and was like, "Oh my god, I have this interview in like 2 minutes." So I ran down here and logged everything up. So this interview is brought to you in my pajamas.
That's perfect. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule. It's nice though to be inside your own house and be like, you know what? It's like, oh, I need to hurry up and go to this meeting, this interview. And just go downstairs instead of going in your car, going somewhere to do it.
Was a beast. There was a cat and a dog on the stairs. I had to go around them. Let me tell you.
Right on. But anyways, let's get this party started. Love to geek out with you here. So you were originally a self-publishing comic book writer, artist before going into voice acting itself. What made you want to go into the world of voice acting?
Oh gosh. This is a great story, but I also tell people, I'm like, don't be like me. I was a comic book artist, and I was selling my wares at like A-Kon and Anime Fest, a lot of the local conventions, doing the Artist Alley, selling my self-published comic book, Enchanted, which is about unicorns that turn into hot dudes. And I was releasing a chapter every year. I also did like a one-shot manga called A Day in the Life of a Cat Girl. And I got a pretty good following just from doing my comics. And I eventually, I started doing panels like on how to self-publish your comics and stuff like that. Because I was like, oh, I'll talk about it. You know, I always say, I'm like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Because I am super blonde at heart. And so I started talking about it. And eventually Anime Fest was like, hey, you know, you're pretty good at this. Do you want to be a guest next year? And I was like, sure, that'd be great. And then that's how I met other voice actors, because once you're a guest, you're kind of all in the same space. And so I met another voice actor. His name was Bruce Lewis. He was also a comic book artist. So we hit it off. And he we were talking about it, and I was like, well, I did theater in high school. Voice acting sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. As a mom, I don't have time to do theater now. And he's like, well, you should audition for Funimation. And so I was like, all right, well, maybe I will. And then I didn't know what to do, so I Googled it. I just Googled like how to be a voice actor for Funimation, and there was this forum dedicated to it. And I just read this forum, and it had a link to Funimation's website for a form to fill out, like to be put on their call list for open auditions. Open auditions is kind of like a cattle call where they will have you read for characters that have already been cast. And so you're not necessarily auditioning for a show, you're just showing what you can do. And so they have this book of sides, and you pick like 3 characters that you think you can do. I tried to pick like different age ranges to be like, look how versatile I am. But I knew absolutely nothing about voice acting, not a single thing.
Right.
So I wrote them this email that was like, hi, I heard you're looking for actors and I would love to be on your list. I was Toto in The Wizard of Oz. So love to hear from you. Like it's one of those things I'm like, I wouldn't have responded to me. Like,
Have you ever got like the situation because it's like, hi, I am the Kristen McGuire, and I know I'm going
you know me as Toto from The Wizard of Oz. And
I was born for that role.
And so 5 months went by. I kind of looked at it like, well, I'm not acting for them anyway, so what do I have to lose if they say no? Which is pretty much my life motto. I'm like, well, the worst they could say is no, and then nothing changes for me. But if they say yes, everything changes. 5 months goes by, I didn't hear anything, and I was like, yeah, I wouldn't have responded either. I don't blame you. And then out of nowhere, I want to say it was right after ACON 2013, out of nowhere, I get this email. It's like, hey, do you still want to do open auditions? And I was like, yes, I do. And so they scheduled a time for like 2 weeks out. And I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. So then I Googled like how to be a voice actor. And there's a bunch of things. There's so many resources online. And so I read a bunch of stuff online from like iwannabeavoiceactor.com and all this other stuff. And then I practiced reading out loud every day for like 2 weeks, and I recorded myself and listened back. And then I went in, I did my open audition. I watched anime off and on at the time. Like I was a fan, but I was also busy making my comics and being a mom and stuff. So I didn't have time to watch a lot of anime. And when I watched it, it was subtitled. So I had the benefit of like going in here and seeing these roles and not knowing who played them in English, and therefore whatever portrayal I gave of them was completely unique to me. I wasn't copying anybody because I hadn't heard it. So when I first met voice actors like, J. Michael Tatum and stuff like that, I had no idea who they were. I was just like, oh, cool, nice to meet you. All right, bye. And only later as my career progressed that I was like, oh, that person's done a lot of work. Like they've been around a long time. That person was important, and I don't know. Sometimes I feel like that helped. But
Wait,
anyway,
when did you start? Like, when was your initial? Like, what was your first role? Like, how long ago was that?
It was 2013. I've been doing it 8 years.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't like the beginning of like because I mean like like the very beginning of like Funimation was like in the early 2000s and stuff. I'm like, oh wow, that is incredibly rare.
I actually heard that it's really rare to get in through open auditions. I did my open audition with Joel McDonald. He was really nice. And then 2 weeks went by, and I thought, well, it's really cool, but I probably won't hear anything. 2 weeks went by, and then they were like, hey, do you want to do additional voices on Hug and I Next? And that was my first ever work. And I was like, this is really cool. Oh no, I think I really like this. And then all of a sudden at 28, I had like a new goal, and that was to be a voice actor. But everyone, if you stop the story there, it sounds like the perfect story. But what actually happened after that was that I did Walla and background voices for a year. And even though I was auditioning pretty consistently, I was not ever booking named characters. And eventually, after like a year of that, and like I went in, I studied like 5 hours for this show, went in and then just bombed the audition. Like I knew I bombed it before I even like left the building. And I was like, I suck so bad. And so I was like, well, obviously I'm the problem then. Like if I'm not booking things, I'm the problem. And so I asked one of the directors, I was like, what can I do to be better? And he was really nice because some directors will just laugh at you. They're like, I don't have time to train you. You know, I have to make work. But Joel was like, just take classes. He was like, take improv, do anything. And I was like, okay, I will. And then I started taking classes and I haven't stopped. It's been 7 years and I still take about 5 to 6 workshops a year. Because I realized I'm like, man, if I want this to be a career, I have to treat it like a career and not like a hobby. And so I always tell people like that was my biggest mistake was being good enough to get in the door, but not actually having the knowledge or know-how to actually make my career move forward. And I feel fortunate that I just discovered it as early on in my career as I did, because once I started actually training and taking acting lessons, like I immediately booked Assassination Classroom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you know, and so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm obviously doing something right. And so now I take classes all the time just because, you know, the market changes and things change and you can learn different things from different people. And I take classes from LA and I take classes in Dallas and I've taken classes everywhere. I've taken film and television classes, which have nothing to do with voiceover, but they're really good. Like they're still really good learning experiences. And so that's what I always tell people. I'm like, my story from the outside looking in sounds like a great story of like, oh, this girl didn't know anything and she just got in the door on luck. And I'm like, I did, but it only took me so far. And then I had to put in a lot of hard work.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not to like, cut to the credit on the fact that you got your foot in the door. I mean, it's always, there's always going to be that situation where there's a little bit of luck that's involved. But the fact of the matter is that, I mean, since you once you got your foot in the door, you got that itch, and you decided and you then put in the work that what most other voice actors do. So like, which is basically they say train and train your skill and hone your skills to make something better. And then you got the fruits of that labor actually a lot faster than normal. I mean, in a year in time. So I wouldn't constitute it all as luck. I mean, I think that it was like, yeah, the luck was that they recognized you, but then at the same time, I mean, they knew what they got. I mean, you eventually improved even more. So there you go.
It's a good mixture of like a dash of luck and a lot of hard work. I do think having some theater experience helped a lot because I did theater all through middle school and high school. And so it's not like I didn't know anything about acting. But I definitely wasn't trained for something as specific as voiceover until I was already in voiceover. And when people say like, what do you wish you knew, then that you know now? And I always say, like, I wish I'd taken more classes because I feel like my career might be completely different if I had known then what I know now, or if I just had more training. Maybe I would have booked bigger opportunities early on. Who knows? But at the same time, I also feel really grateful because I've never forgotten what it feels like to be in that year-long slump of, like, not really booking work and, like, how awful that felt. And so it always makes me feel really grateful for where I am. And so, I don't know, maybe I would be unbearable if I had succeeded. If I had succeeded early on, like so fast, I might actually be unbearable.
But then again, see, you've kind of found what you wanted to do in the long run. But in terms, though, I mean, if you did start it early, would you have been in having the time to do your art and stuff like that, like with comics? That was your other interest too,
Yeah, I don't know, and definitely my comics have fallen on the back burner with writing and directing and acting and everything like that because that's all paid work that I get paid to do right now. And comics and art is always like I do the work first, and then maybe I'll make some money back on it later. But I definitely can't make a living off of it. So, and I also have kids. It's a really hard career to have when you have kids too, because you're balancing and juggling a lot. And especially when you're going to conventions and things like that, or if you have to travel to record. Like I recently went to LA for some work and, it's like, so I had to travel. I had to arrange childcare and stuff like that. So there are other obstacles too that probably would have been the same regardless of whether I knew what I knew now then or didn't. So
Well, I mean, you kind of answered what the next question I was going to ask, but like, how long has it been for you to kind of go back into writing and drawing art for your for comics for your comic book?
I love drawing comics, but when I made my own, I discovered it is a lot of work. Like, it is so much work. And I hate drawing backgrounds. I'm just going to throw it out there. I hate them. I just want to draw the cute characters. They're my favorite part. So I've actually kind of moved away from comics, and now I'm working on a light novel. Or 2 or 3. I've actually got like a lot of ideas and I filter between them. But writing anime, I've been reading a lot of light novels because a lot of the shows I write are adapted from light novels. So I have like a huge library of light novels now. And I'm like, man, I really like the format of a light novel because you can describe the setting and everything, but you don't necessarily have to draw it. And so that's what I've been doing in my spare time is I've been writing a light novel.
I like that. Although maybe you probably might be the best person to ask this because, like, me and my girlfriend actually have had I've had a question about it. I don't get it, but like, what's the difference between a light novel and a mangaka? You know, like, or a manga itself. Like, you know, there's a series of like, they sometimes have a manga adaptation of an anime, and then but the same anime may have a light novel version of that. And I'm like, but isn't that the same story?
It's okay. So typically, a manga is an adaptation of the light novel, and a lot of times the anime is either an adaptation of the light novel or of the manga. That time I got reincarnated as a slime. I read an interview from the director for it. The manga is an adaptation of the light novel. The anime is an adaptation of the manga. So there are things that are happening in Slime right now that people are like, this didn't happen until this volume of the light novel, but it's happening in the manga. All it is that a light novel is a story, much like you would read, as a young adult. So it is a novel, and it just has anime pictures in it, every couple of chapters. But it is text. It is primarily text, so you use a lot more of your imagination. Whereas manga is just a graphic novel, and so they're, it's comic. It's formatted as a comic book. And that is really the only difference. Is just that a light novel is a book that you read with pictures accompanying it every couple of pages, and a graphic novel is a comic.
So it's basically like kind of like what I see sometimes when they did Star Wars the episode 1, but then they said, hey, we're going to do Star Wars the comic of the same series of the same story.
Yeah,
it's just showing the pictures instead of you just reading it or watching it.
Yin Press has done this, right? I'm sure you've seen the manga adaptations of like Emma or the Scarlet Letter, I believe, has one. They did one of Twilight, Witch and Wizard by James Patterson. So that's the difference, right? Is like Witch and Wizard is a book by James Patterson. It is a novel. And then Yin Press did a manga adaptation of it. So a light novel is just a book that is written, and they're very popular in Japan because a lot of people can just write their story and they'll upload it to like a website. I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me, but there's like a big website where you can just go and read light novels. And a lot of times those light novels get picked up for publication and then eventually get an anime. And then sometimes if it's really popular, like Sword Art Online, it also gets a manga adaptation.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense now. See, that's also what could just answer that to me. I'll be like, okay, that makes that like if it's straightforward, that's pretty straightforward. That's exactly what I needed. Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So when I say I would rather make light novels than graphic novels, it just comes down to it is easier for me to write a story and then
to write and draw.
And then just draw a few pictures every couple of pages than have to illustrate every single moment of every single page.
Oh yeah. In different kind of views and different kind of actions and panels. Ooh, yeah.
Right.
That gets old fast.
And I love doing my own art. So it's like a light novel is perfect for me because I don't have to hire an artist. Like I can do it myself, but I can make it quicker than I could make a graphic novel. It took me 6 years to publish Enchanted.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to. It takes so long when you're just doing it in your spare time. And so I was like, all right, well, I love making stories, but I feel like maybe this isn't the best format for me to tell stories.
What kind of comics are you into, and or do you have any favorite writers or any artists itself, or what?
I mean, as far as like manga and stuff, I love Yuatase. She did Fushigi Yugi, and Ayashi no Series and stuff like that. She was a really big influence on me when I was a teenager. Clamp, of course, was a huge influence on me. These days I read a lot of stuff for work, which is kind of lame.
It's understandable though.
I'm always like, I want to read things that interest me, but then I am always like swamped with work stuff. And so like every time I buy comic books, it's like for work. Or it's a show I was in that I didn't write, but I'm like, oh, like I've been collecting the New Game manga. Because I love New Game and I want to see how it ends. But we only had 2 seasons of the anime. And so sometimes I collect it just because I'm like, well, I really liked the story and now I want to continue it. So I've been, as far as like manga and stuff, I've been reading New Game. I was reading If It Were For My Daughter, I'd Even Defeat a Demon Lord, but I'm not super stoked about how it's turning out. The ending is not what I thought it was going to be, and so I've kind of lost interest in it. I was reading Inu
It's hard for
Secret Service.
It's hard for isekais though. Like I mean, like an isekai to end, it's really. I think it's tougher for that to go.
It's actually not an isekai. It's about it's just a fantasy. I love fantasy and magic stories. It's about a guy who finds like a little abandoned demon girl. And he takes her in, and I was like, oh, this is so sweet and pure. But it ultimately ends with her growing up and getting married to him. And that's kind of where they lost me.
That's kind of like it's like grooming. Oh no.
And it's like they try to justify it by like saying like, oh, well, he's not grooming her, but she's always looked at him as like a friend, not a father, and blah, blah, blah. But regardless, no. I don't really. I am sad because I was really thinking it was just a really sweet, wholesome manga, and I'm sure it still is sweet and wholesome. I should just give it a chance and finish it. But I was like, oh no, I read the spoiler online, and I was like, no. I was like, no, I don't know how I feel about it. And she grows up really fast because she's a demon and stuff. And I don't know.
But it's still kind of like when something like that, when they introduce romance in that kind of, because when you're reading the book and you're reading the series, you're kind of watching them grow into a relationship, not like a loving relationship, but just like a relationship between the demon and him. And then all of a sudden when they're like, okay, we're going to put them together. We're going to make them shit together.
Yeah, now it's not family anymore. It's like different. I'm like, oh no.
Completely different.
My favorite genre is just like cute girls doing cute things. Like I love stuff like that. Like New Game is all about women making video games together. And I really love that kind of stuff. Or girls sports. Like, God, I love girls sports. There's not a lot of it out there though. But anything about like girls sports anime.
Yeah, like that soft tennis one. I know that. I don't think there's a lot. You're right.
Or Keijo. I'm in Keijo.
Is that really a sport though?
I mean, it is now in South America.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, they really did it. But like, it's like those shows are fun and I love being in them. But I was in Tamayomi last year and I loved Tamayomi because it's just about girls baseball. And, I played sports in high school. So to me, I'm like, oh, this is cool. This reminds me of high school and stuff like that. But there's not a lot out there. So, but when I read stuff, like, it's definitely like, it's all girly stuff. And then I read a lot of normal books. Like I'm really into Sarah J. Maas right now and the Throne of Glass series. And I read her other series too. A Court of Thorn and Roses, that series. I read that whole series. So I'm also I really love fantasy and magic and anything with like strong female protagonists is my jam.
I definitely would. That's cool. That's cool to hear, though. I mean, but I'm thinking like sport. Like when you told me sports animes for women, like women's sports. There's not, like you said, there's not a lot. The ones I'm thinking of is like Girls Under Panzer, the tank one, and then the.
Is that it sports or historical?
No, well,
fiction?
what that one? That's weird. It's like a giant. It's like an extreme game of like dodgeball because like each team has like a series of tanks, and it's like It's a 3-girl team usually that has like that's manually using a tank to shoot the other enemy, and then if they shoot the enemy right, a flag pops up. I mean, it's a weird
Oh, that
sport.
actually
Like,
sounds really cool. I feel like
yeah,
I'd actually be really into that.
yeah, you should actually read it. It's actually very fun. It's very fun. It's a very fun read, I will say that. And they had the 2 anime adaptations and an OVA, and but there was another one, the one that was like whoever created what's it called, Senran Kagura. They made another series with like jet skis and sniper rifle.
Yeah, is it Katagawa Jet Girl? Did I say it right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that one. I'm like, what is going on? Like, are they just making
I don't
sports
know
up?
much about that one.
Oh
I would
my
love to see a
God.
girls volleyball anime that's not there's a beach one where they're all in like bikinis, but I'd like to see just like a
Mhm.
normal one. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
Like
like
Haikyuu version, but for
Haikyuu.
girls.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. My
I would totally
oldest
agree.
daughter plays volleyball and she loves Haikyuu. And so it's like it'd be really cool to have something like that for her.
All the youngins like Haikyuu, to be honest. I'm just-
She's always like,
That's-
I'm gonna be the tiny giant because she's really small like me.
That's awesome. And well, you already told me what kind of anime genres you're into, so there you go. But besides like the voice acting parts of the process of of just the regular anime process, you've done different roles when it comes to like localization of anime here in the States. But from like directing to the script writing, is there one that you prefer the most to do?
I probably prefer directing out of the two. Acting is the most fun, obviously. But directing is probably my favorite. Writing, I'm good at writing. But it's a very solo job, you don't really talk to anybody. You're in your little hole and you adapt scripts, for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, and it becomes really, redundant and repetitive. And once you've written one isekai, you've written them all. But directing is fun because, like, even if you have 2 isekai shows back to back, you have a different cast, so you're working with different people, and it's a collaboration. I really like directing a lot because it's kind of like putting together. I'm stealing this from Sunny Straight, by the way, but it's like putting together a puzzle where all the pieces move, and you don't really know if the end product is going to look like what you thought it was going to look like. But it's neat because everybody helped, and so it's still really cool. And when you're directing, like, you have ideas about like how something should sound, but then an actor comes in and they take their life experiences and their ideas and they put it into a character, and they'll throw out something that you're like, whoa, that is so much funnier than whatever was in my head. Like, and so I like that a lot. And you're working with your engineer, and so you're all just like a team coming together to put together this product, and you laugh and you have fun, and sometimes you have to be very vulnerable and things like that. And it's just so much more collaborative than just being a writer. And I think that's why I personally prefer directing. I like the guidance part of it, and I like working with people and getting that opportunity to help like build actors up and things like that, and go on this journey with them. Like, that's really cool to me. Like, I'm very much a people person, and script writing is very solitary, so I definitely prefer directing.
Yeah, well, I mean, into script writing itself, though, like, I mean, I've heard besides you, and I've talked to other people that have done script writing themselves, but from what I've gathered, they say that it's a thankless job and it is incredibly difficult itself, and like. Since you have experience and stuff, like, I've been kind of wondering, like, why is it every time when someone says script writing, it's like it feels like you shut the door or the sun just goes down. It's like it's kind of weird to me. But like, what makes it so difficult?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would like to say that I feel like I'm really fortunate that we now live in a time where many people are more appreciative of a good script. I feel like I talk to a lot of people online that really appreciate script writers and what they do. But that was not always the case. Script writing script writing is something that if it's done really well, you usually don't notice. And if it's done really badly, everybody notices. And so, which is probably why it feels so thankless, because like when it's flowing, then there's no hold up in the booth. There's no rewrites. There's always going to be some level of rewrites, but directors aren't having to rewrite entire scripts or things like that. So everything just flows. So nobody thinks about it. They're not over here thinking like, oh wow, we saved so much time today because the scriptwriter did their job. They're just going, they're just moving. But if a script is bad, everyone's stopping. Maybe words are hard to say. Maybe there's an error in the translation, things like that. And when that happens, everybody is talking about how much they hate the scriptwriter. And so, I think that is why a lot of people say like it's a thankless job because no one's going out of their way to be like, hey, great job on that script last week. You really nailed it. They're just like, all right, cool. Moving on to the next thing. But
it's like you've done your job.
Yeah, you did your job. Way to go. But if it's bad, like you will get emails telling you like what you need to change and fix and stuff like that. So it's a job where you very much only really hear back if there's something wrong with it. Has there been
a situation where that happened to you though? Like there was a script that you turned in and they were like, wow, this isn't, like, you just kind of upset about it? Or
no, I'm amazing.
Of course you are.
Actually, I really don't get too many revisions back. I have gotten revisions back over the years. It's like, hey, I think you could write this character to sound a bit more intelligent, or sometimes if we don't know who's going to be the actor, that can affect timing. Some actors talk faster than other actors. And so sometimes I'll get not revisions, but I'll get a request that's like, hey, this actor is talking really fast, so all of their stuff is coming in a bit short. Can you adjust for future episodes? And so it's like, all right, well, then I know I have to like really pack the sentence with words and things like that if it's a fast talking actor. Or sometimes I get actors that talk much slower. And so like the director will be like, hey, everything's overwritten. Can you act some words, in the future? And so those are things that I typically see. So I don't actually get too many revisions. Or if I do get notes or stuff, it's just like, hey, maybe you could make this funnier. Or it's like, just little personal things.
Little tidbits and stuff here and there, but it wasn't like overall. Okay.
Yeah. So I've never really gotten anything that's like, this sucks, redo all of it. But
that sounds like a pile trip. It's like
what makes it so difficult is that so we are given a translation, and when you read subtitles, those subtitles is the translation. That's the translation. So the problem with that is that subtitles are limited to how many characters can be on a screen. So it's like you've never seen a show where there's just like 4 lines of subtitles, in a sentence. So a lot of times information gets cut out because of the character limit for the subtitles allow. And so what makes that difficult is sometimes I will get something that the translation is only 2 sentences long, but I have 4 sentences worth of math flaps, and half of it had to be cut out because it could not fit on the screen in the subtitles. And sometimes I will have a note from the translator saying like, this is what everything said, but I had to cut it for length. And sometimes I don't have that. And in those moments, I have to find a way to fill out all those pre-animated mouth flaps or mouth movements without adding or changing the story. So I may have a translation that says something like, we should go to the store, but I may have, 2 sentences worth of mouth flaps to fill, but I've only got the we should go to the store. So then I have to come up with something like, well, here's an idea. Why don't we just go to the store? Which is a great way to fill those flaps without adding or changing to the story. I can't say something that would change the plot. Like, I don't know. My mom said we should go to the store because we don't know that his mom said that. I can't do things like that. I have to be very in tune with what's happening. I can't assume information. I am fortunate that a lot of the things I work on have light novels and mangas and things like that, because sometimes the information that's missing in that translation is present in the light novels. And so then I can take that information and put it in there. But the best way to describe it is it's like Tetris, but with words. And And
Like you're
they're
writing
also,
in a box, though, in a way, though,
yeah,
too. It's a lot of restrictions and figuring
it's
it
like
out.
reverse writing a crossword puzzle almost. And in Japan, they pause a lot when they think, or
Mhm.
when they're talking. So there's a lot of times where like you'll see an anime character say something like blah 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 desu ka? You know?
Mhm.
Well, those flaps are already animated, so now I have to say something to fill those flaps, but I have to honor all the pauses in the animation. But if I stick to it, desu ka is just the end of a question. And so really they're just saying like blah 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 blah, huh? But the translation is usually like, we could go to the store? Well, that sounds weird in English. And so I
Mhm.
have to find a way to be like, let's go to the store. Okay? Like I have to find a way to make it still flow and sound normal. Otherwise, we say sometimes we say like, we don't want it to sound like William Shatner is talking. Like, I think we should go to the
The
store.
store.
Like, because that sounds really silly in English. Or a lot of times in the subtitles, the information will be very repetitive. Someone will say like, well, that's the staff of lightning. And someone will go, staff of lightning? And they're like, the staff of lightning shoots lightning from the staff. And like in English, it sounds like you're like, oh man, wow. We sound like the reader doesn't know what they're listening to. And so a lot of times we have to readapt that to be like, this is the staff of lightning. Well, what does it do? Well, obviously it shoots lightning, like, so we have to kind of rearrange it to not be so repetitive or, uh, we don't like to assume that our viewers are stupid. so, so, that's a lot of things that we focus on when we're adapting, which is like, how do we make it flow even in English while we honor the pauses in the animation? How do
Mhm.
we make sure all the information that's needed is present? There's a lot of in the Japanese language. There's a lot of gosh, what is it called? Uh, I can't think
Like
of the word. um,
pauses or like or things that stretches it out to kind of.
no, there's context. A
Oh,
lot of the
okay.
context is assumed and not provided. So it's like
Mm.
saying like, you can say in Japanese like, my name is Kristen, but you can also just say Kristen des, which just means Kristen.
Yeah.
Like, and
Mm.
so that's how Japanese uses a lot, is like they get rid of a lot of the early things in the sentence. Like those things do exist, but a lot of times they're just left out, and you have to assume the context based on, the rest of the sentence and things like that. And so, there was a sentence I wrote just this morning that uh was only like 2 flaps, but the translation I got was like 6 flaps.
Oh
And I was
man.
like, "Oh, okay. Well, now I have to fit 6 flaps of information in 2 flaps. So I have to like completely rewrite this thing." Because of the extra information that is
Yeah.
is derived from things that aren't present. So the
So is
Japanese
this?
language is very complicated.
Oh yeah. So it's like a scriptwriter itself though too. Are they also the ones that make the calls of the like the catchphrase? Like it's like for instance like I don't know, I'm old school, so I don't but like you remember if you remember a show called Rurouni Kenshin back in the day with Kenshin was saying the word Oro, but then the English
Mhm.
translation of it, they don't have Oro. It said they kind of made him sound kind of Yoda-ish, where it said they said to
Oh,
fill
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah. I
extra
remember
spot.
that.
They said like he said he ends his phrases sometimes with like that it does or will do so or something like that.
Right, right,
Some weird
right.
weird phrases. Is that something that the script writers are also in charge of?
We can make guesses at it, but it ultimately comes down to the director and what
Okay.
they want to do. In Doctor Stone, uh, there is a character that says "yabe" all the time. "Yabe" is a way to say like, uh, they say like that's bad. But it's also like kind of the New England version of like wicked, like, oh, that's wicked, or I've got a wicked headache. Like, so it could be like wicked could be cool, or it could also be bad, or
Mhm.
like stupid, it's like, oh, that's stupid, or like, oh, that's stupid cool, um and so yabe is like that. And I think in the subtitles, they don't really keep that catchphrase that much, but in the manga, they always say like, "Wow, that's bad," and so the director decided to go with what they saw in the manga and keep that adaptation. So a lot of times we'll do that too. We'll be like, well, what happens in the manga? And so if it's present in the manga, then we can justify having it, in ours. But like in that time I got reincarnated as a slime, Malim says no da at the end of most of her sentences. She's da 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 no da. And we don't have that present because one, it's not in the source material. It's not like there's no way it's carried over in the light novel or the manga. She doesn't have any sort of like catchphrase on that. So we don't have a catchphrase on that, but I've seen people be like, well, she doesn't have her catchphrase. And I'm like, well, we can't just leave no da in the English. It would sound weird. And so, those sometimes you have to be like, well, I either have to axe it or I have to see what is present in the source material. Because a lot of times the people that are watching the anime read the source material. So sometimes it is better to just be like, hey, this is what they did in the source material, so we should probably do something similar.
So basically we have the people that'll be like, oh, it's not like that in the book. But just like how all movies are.
Right, exactly.
Oh, no. So
it's a very complicated process, and it is different show to show. And I always tell new writers, because they're like, can you give me some tips? And I'm like, I have a million rules that you need to know. And I can't get through all of them.
Here's the rules of script writing, but each rule has 12 caveats to it.
Yeah, it all has 12 caveats, and it could totally change because, we talk about, not wanting to use repetition, but there are characters. I want to say Rico Fajardo plays a character in Fire Force who speaks in a repetitive manner. Like all of his stuff is supposed to be repetitive. It's just there's always a rule, and there's always a reason to break the rule, depending on what show you're writing. And so it really is just it is such a refined skill that I say it is the hardest job, in my opinion, in production to do. But I don't know. I don't engineer, so maybe the engineers will tell you that their job is the hardest, and I would believe them if they said it was, because I can't do it.
I'm just saying, but if you figure out a way to kind of consolidate your knowledge in script writing and to make a book, you probably also have to add a flow chart and maybe a PDF design, PowerPoint of all of that.
It's impossible to explain. It's impossible. I can't do it. Every time I try, I'm like, I'm sorry, new writer, because I'm just gonna dump all this information on you. And if a mouth movement is open at the end, if a character says no da, then their mouth is open at the end a lot. I have to match that sound because the mouth is just hanging open.
Right.
So I can't just say I can't end it with something like eat, because eat makes a T sound. So it actually causes the mouth to close. So if a mouth is hanging open, well, I also have to write it in a way to where their mouth will hang open in the English too. So it'll be like, we should go eat, or we should eat, right? Or K or something like that, so that it'll match the mouth flap on that too. So it's not even just I have to match these pre-animated mouth flaps, but I also have to match the sounds those mouth flaps make. So there's a lot going on.
When the mouth stays open, you can just stretch the word out. When you say K, it's like K.
Sometimes we have to, but I bet now, if you watch some anime now, knowing everything I just told you, you'll probably look at it completely different. You're like, oh my gosh, she's right.
Yeah, but it's funny. After interviewing a lot of voice actors now, it's now I'm hearing voices. I'm like, oh, I know who that is and stuff. To add another tier of figuring stuff out while watching anime on top of it. It's come and bring it. I always love the production kind of thing. I always find it. But you've already said something about your directing, why you like directing so much. But there is something I did want to ask you about, because with your during one of the series that you directed, Citrus is the one specifically that I was kind of wondering about, because I feel that there's not a lot of animes that are out there what Citrus was, because I mean, the idea, you have I think representation and all these different kinds of things are very important for these kind of thing. And I was just kind of wondering, since you were the director of it, was there any kind of extra pressure that that was involved while directing it, like, or did everything kind of go smoothly? Because like I think Citrus is kind of like an important anime, especially for LGBTQ scenario itself. So like I just want to kind of get your opinion on it.
I mean, I treated Citrus like I would treat pretty much any project, with respect. I am white and I am cis and I'm straight, and so like I don't face a lot of the difficulties that the LGBTQT community faces. But when they asked me if I would direct Citrus, I said yes. One, because it already looked like a show I would like, but two, because I felt like it was a show that needed to be treated with respect, and it was about young women, kind of coming into themselves and discovering things about themselves. And I recognized, a lot of the questions and growth and trauma that some of these characters, came from, and what caused them to behave the way they behave in the series. And I felt like it was really interesting. And so I held auditions and I spoke to every actress that auditioned. And I told them, I was like, this is a show with these themes. Citrus has some mature moments in it. And so I wanted everyone to kind of know like what the show was and where it could possibly go. And there's a lot of questions about consent and things like that in the show. And so I spoke to every actress and, told them what it was and what I wanted it to be about. And I said, but I also really want this to be a positive show for the community, and about half the actors and actresses involved are in the LGBT community. And I felt like that was really important, to have their insight as well. But, it certainly wasn't a requirement or anything like that, because at the end of the day, I wanted to just have the best possible product we could have. But everybody treated it with respect, and we had a lot of fun on it too. Like, even though it was such a serious show, we had a lot of fun on it. And like I said, we recognize that like these are characters that are kind of coming into these new feelings and these new situations. And why do people act the way they act? Why do people do the things they do? And we discussed it a lot with May, because May is probably the most forceful in the show, and she has the most growing to do, I feel like. And so we discussed a lot of like, why is May the way May is? And we thought about like her childhood and her dad not really being around and growing up with her grandfather and not having a lot of, family or things like that around to show affection. And but it was good. And the cast was great, and we had a lot of fun, and a lot of people really like what we did. Even I feel like there are some people that don't like what Citrus represents for the community because of the consent and things like that. And but no one has ever said the dub is bad.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So I can't do anything about the show, but we did set out to treat it with respect, and I would do that for any show I had. Because it's somebody made it because they loved it and they believed in the story that it represents. And I did feel like it was an important show for the community, but I also know that I'm straight, and so I can only do so much. And so that's where you really rely on your cast, and you trust your cast and their feelings and their process. And again, that's what makes it a collaboration is, my story is going to be different than somebody else's story. And it's important to have all of those elements present, even if you're just dubbing an anime,
I mean, like I think you did a wonderful job on it. Personally, because like when I first like my girlfriend loves loved the series as well, and I was just like, wow, like this is a pretty like the topic, like when I came across this anime, because there was nothing like to kind of get me ready of like what like it normally is for anime. There's no advertisements of what the series is about and stuff like that until it's like when it comes. And then I was like, oh yeah, this series is pretty heavy. It
is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And the first episode ends on such like a heavy note, which is I think what bothered a lot of people. But I talked to Amberly Connors about it, and I'm like, this is why I think May does this, not to spoil anything. I was like, but this is the only way May has ever been shown affection. And so she thinks this is how it has to be done, which is probably a little bit of an assumption on my part, but you do what you have to do in those moments. And we really wanted to understand May. I did read the first 4 volumes of the manga before I did auditions so that I could really tell people what I thought their characters were like and things like that, and give them as much information as possible on the series before anyone signed on to it. But everyone was fantastic. Everyone was great. Everyone really believed in doing the best they could. Everybody wanted to make it a good product. And I feel like that made it a good product.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, it's a really good favorite, I will say. You definitely did a great job on it. So
thanks. We tried.
and also, I mean, during these times, like during the pandemic itself, and the idle time that it may have given you throughout the past year and a half, was there something that you picked up as a hobby or something, or collecting, or something that you did?
I didn't have any idle time in the pandemic because script writing never slowed down. I still had to write 2 scripts a week. So even though the dubbing process itself has slowed down, it didn't really affect script writing because it can be done remotely. So I wrote shows months ago.
You had something to fall back on, in other words.
Right. Well, I'm basically just still doing the same thing I've always done, which is I'm just still writing shows, and maybe they don't get dubbed that season, but I wrote the show. So I think at one point in time, like 3 or 4 shows came out all at the same time that I'd written, and someone's like, "You must be dying." I'm like, "Well, 2 of those were from last season." So my time hasn't slowed at all, but I did get an LA agent in the pandemic. It kind of pushed me to like really expand my career. I got engaged. So
yes, congratulations.
Thanks.
On that.
I got engaged to Clifford Chapin. So we did some things.
So you're like you weren't doing anything, but you were doing.
We were just living life and continuing life, and I started doing some work for LA. So I got cast in the 86 dub recently, which seems like a really good show. I've really enjoyed working on that. So really, I'm just kind of doing the same thing. I've been working on my light novel. I told you I was writing a light novel, so I've been working on that, which is kind of like Citrus. I am really interested in using this opportunity for representation. I'm trying to write, there's a character that's non-binary, and there's a character who's a type 1 diabetic like me. And there are POC characters, because I realize that, everybody who loves anime, are these people. We're all diabetics or POC or non-binary or gay or straight. There's so many people in the anime community, and we're so beautiful and diverse, and yet anime is not that diverse at all. It really isn't.
It's it's funny because I'm black, and it's funny, some of my friends, we've always kids, they're like, does anime know how to draw black characters? So I was because the ones that they do, it's either could be very, very borderline, pretty there the spectrum, or it's just not. It doesn't look right. So
let me tell you, as a white straight person, it's really scary to be like, I'm gonna write this queer character, and I'm like, oh no. But luckily I have a lot of friends, and so I've been reaching out to people and being like, what should I avoid? What should I not do? What do you hate seeing in media? And actually the answer's been pretty simple, which is most people are like, we just want to live our lives. Why does it always have to be the source of contention in a show? And so I'm like, all right, cool. And so, my goal in writing light novels is to write stories that better fit our community and have characters that better fit our community. And so but they're just still stories, it's, my current light novel is about a group of kids that have a cat spotting club, and that's all they do is they just have cat spotting adventures. And the fact that characters are non-binary or POC has nothing to do with the story at all. They just all exist. And, I guess that's the goal.
I mean, that's cool though. I mean, the biggest thing is diversity. I mean, I think overall it's just diversity. Like, there's different kinds of people, and there's different kinds of people that are interested in the same kind of genre. It's just that to kind of have that kind of representation to show within that genre would be nice to see, or to read itself. Not the same stereotypical 17-year-old or high school student that's going to save the world, that kind of situation,
Right.
that
And
kind of thing.
I like that anime is like that, right? Is that anime can be about literally anything. Like you can have an anime about wanting to be the number one hero, or you can also be an anime about a girl who is in the cooking club. And I think that's really cool. Is like there's literally something out there for everyone. And, I wanted to make a story that is kind of light, lighthearted, and just these are adventures of kids just of being kids, but still a story that people could see themselves in. I discovered in writing this, I'm like, you know what? Now that I think about it, I can't tell you a single story that has a type 1 diabetic character. In an anime for sure, but like in most media anywhere, like there's not going to be a main character that's like, I'm a superhero, but I'm also type 1 diabetic. Hold on, let me take my insulin, and that sucks. Like, I think about isekai stories. Oh my God, if I got isekai, that'd be awful. Like I would die immediately because there's no insulin that we know of. I'm like, no, that's people are like, wouldn't it be cool if we got transported to another world? I'm like, no, I would die. Like that sounds terrible for me.
It's like I need my heart pressure, my blood pressure medicine. They don't have that kind of stuff over there.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I posted about my diabetic character, like I had a lot of people that were like, "Oh my gosh, a diabetic character in anime," and I'm like, this is what people want to see, and that's exciting. And so that's what I've been doing with my downtime is just. I guess writing stories and trying to put what I want to see in the market,
People will definitely come to see that. I would love to to check that out too. Whenever you bring that out, so that'll be awesome.
It's gonna hopefully be this year. So we'll see. It's really. I say that as I'm like, I'll do it with all my free time, but
it's like you barely had free time of yourself in the past year in a pandemic. I can only imagine what to expect.
I'm trying. I really think
I won't put any pressure on you, but when it comes out, I am definitely there.
Great. Well, I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it when it comes out. So hopefully it'll be good. Hopefully it'll be a story that people like.
Okay, awesome. And the last question is, I'm probably going to start doing this when I talk to other voice actors. I would love to kind of know what they're if you remember it, it's all good. It could be anything. But what is the craziest sentence you have said when you were voice acting? I mean, or at least one that you could remember.
Oh my gosh. What is the rating of this show?
It's whatever you want it to be. It can be rated R. It can be rated G.
Oh no. I mean, having been in anime, I've said all kinds of crazy things over the 8 years. And I always think I'm like, oh, this is the one. But I like the ones that out of context sound like they could be something completely different. So I guess I'll just go with this little line from My Hero. My binging balls destroy anything they touch.
Okay, you're right. That is out of context.
And or maybe they eat up everything they touch. I'd have to see the actual line in the script. Disintegrate. Anyway, this kid's balls destroy anything they touch. But he just has his quirk is that he has these little chain chomper looking balls like from Mario, and he controls them and they go and they just eat everything in their path. But they're called binging balls is the quirk name.
It's called binging balls. I love that.
Sure is. So out of context, it sounds like really dirty, but it's actually just an attack move.
I love it. That's great. Oh man, Kristen, thank you so much for geeking out with me. It was great to talk to you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Now everybody knows I too am just a giant nerd.
That's what the show is all about, man. I mean, everyone who listens to it. You know what I love about it? It's actually kind of good. It was actually cool because originally I made the show because of the pandemic. Because since conventions were over the past year and a half, I was like, I really want to talk to folks about it again. But so I wanted to kind of bring people to talk to cool people like this again. And but the more I was doing it, I realized, I love this segment way better than kind of going to a convention because it's like you're in your house, you're in your own cool place. You don't have time restraint. You don't have 15 minutes, then you have to go to the next room with loud background. I love it. I love the whole thing. So yeah, so I definitely like this more than just kind of, I think this is a way better thing to kind of talk to you as a creator and stuff like that. And then people appreciate that. So
well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So like I said, I'm always a little nervous about it. I'm like, man, people are going to listen to this and they're going to be like, what a nerd. I can't believe I looked up to her. And I'm like, yeah, sorry.
Oh my God. Is like, did you hear that Kristen McGuire episode of the podcast?
Did you hear she reads manga for fun?
Now, if anything, you're probably going to get more people, so you'll be definitely.
We'll see.
Is there anything you like to plug before I let you go? It's like, social media, any places, websites where people can see you?
Yeah, people can follow me on Twitter. I'm most active on Twitter, which is just Chris Comics. Look out for my light novel, hopefully this year. And yeah, you can watch Kimono Jihen. SSSS Dinosanin is airing right now, which is one of my it's a personal favorite of mine. I was a big fan of Gridman, and I watched some of the live action Gridman. And I'm adapting the scripts for Dinosanin. So watch Dinosanin.
That's great. And all right, well, thank you so much, Kristen, for stopping by. And also, if you loved this amongst any other episodes, definitely give us a thumbs up or on any of our podcast services out there, or go to our main website, confreaksandgeeks.com, to check out other episodes. Well, this is Davis signing off. Y'all take it easy.